She called the county on me over a garden gnome. Filed 3 complaints in 1 month. Sent inspectors to my door twice. So I decided to return the favor and requested the same inspection on her property. What they found wasn't a gnome problem. It was an unpermitted addition, a code violation older than her HOA title, and a paper trail she never thought anyone would pull. By the end of this video, you'll see exactly how a petty HOA president tried to weaponize the system against a neighbor and how that system turned around and exposed her instead. If you've ever dealt with an HOA board member who treats their clipboard like a badge, stay to the end, because the final document is the one that got her removed from a board. Welcome back to the HOA Fallout. Subscribe now because this one gets wild. It started the way most of these stories start, with something small. A garden gnome, half hidden behind a hydrangea bush, sitting in my front yard for exactly 11 days before it became, apparently, a threat to community standards. I'll call her Karen because if you've lived in a neighborhood with a homeowners association, you already know Karen. She wasn't just a resident. She was the HOA president, self-appointed enforcer of every bylaw, every setback line, every shade of approved exterior paint. And for reasons I still don't fully understand, she decided I was her next project. The first letter came from certified mail. Violation notice. Unauthorized lawn ornament. 30 days to remove or face daily fines. I laughed it off, moved the gnome, figured that was the end of it. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, a second letter arrived, this time about my mailbox post, which apparently was 2 inches taller than the association's approved specification. 2 inches. I measured it myself, twice, just to be sure I wasn't losing my mind. Then came the third notice, then a fourth, and finally, the moment that changed everything, a county code. Enforcement inspector showed up at my front door, clipboard in hand, because Karen had filed a formal complaint alleging unpermitted structural changes to my property. That's when I stopped being annoyed and started paying attention. Here's the thing about HOA presidents who love rules so much they'll call in outside inspectors over a garden gnome, they rarely apply that same scrutiny to themselves. So I did something simple. I filed a public records request. Not out of revenge, not yet just curiosity. I want to know exactly what authority she was operating under, what her official complaint history looked like, and whether the rule she was citing against me had ever been enforced against anyone else in the neighborhood. What I found in that records request took this from annoying neighbor dispute to something else entirely. Karen's own property, the one she'd lived in for 9 years, the one she used as the model example in HOA newsletters for community standards, had an addition built onto the back that never appeared in any county permit database. No inspection record, no certificate of occupancy, no sign-off from the fire marshal, which matters a lot when that addition sits less than the required distance from the property line. I sat with that information for a few days, honestly unsure what to do with it. Do I let it go? Do I confront her directly? Or do I do exactly what she did to me, let the system do the talking? I requested a standard code compliance review. Not an accusation, not a complaint dripping with detail. Just a simple procedural request, the same kind she'd filed against me 4 times in 2 months. I want to be clear here, I didn't fabricate anything. I didn't exaggerate anything. I simply asked the same office she'd used against me to take a look at her property using the same standard they'd applied to mine. 3 weeks later, the inspector's report came back. The unpermitted addition was real. The setback violation was real. And buried in the file was something neither of us expected. A decade-old boundary dispute with a neighbor on her other side, one that had apparently been resolved without ever going through the county, using a private agreement that had no legal standing whatsoever. In other words, part of her backyard wasn't fully hers to build on in the first place. Now here's where it gets interesting, because HOA violations don't just sit quietly in a filing cabinet. Under the association's own bylaws, the one she wrote, the one she enforced against me down to the inch on a mailbox post, a board member found an active violation of county code is subject to immediate suspension from the board pending resolution. I didn't write that rule. She did. I just made sure the board secretary had a copy of the inspection report at the next meeting. The meeting itself was something I wish I'd recorded, though what came out in the minutes was enough. Other homeowners, it turned out, had their own stories of fines that seemed to apply only to certain houses, approvals that moved suspiciously fast for board members' friends, notices that showed up right after minor personal disagreements at community events. Once one person raises their hand and says, "Actually, that happened to me too," the room changes fast. What had looked like isolated pettiness turned out to be a pattern, and the inspection report became the piece of paper that finally gave people permission to say something. Karen was suspended from the board within the month, pending her own compliance resolution, the same 30-day window she'd given me over a gnome. She ended up having to file retroactive permits, pay reinspection fees, and resolve the boundary issue through an actual licensed surveyor. The board seat she'd held for 6 years went up for a new vote. She didn't run again. As for me, the garden gnome is back, slightly to the left this time, just to see if anyone notices. The real lesson here isn't about gnomes, or mailbox posts, or even Karen specifically. It's about understanding that HOA power is only as strong as the compliance of the person wielding it. If someone in your community is using code enforcement as a personal weapon, the answer usually isn't to escalate emotionally. It's to request the same standard be applied evenly. Public records are public for a reason. Code compliance isn't selective, even when enforcement sometimes is. If this story sounded familiar, if you've got your own HOA horror story sitting in your inbox right now, drop it in the comments. Some of the best videos on this channel started exactly that way. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, because the HOA Fallout posts a new story every week, and next week's might be even messier than this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.